And then I broke down the next 12 weeks, and then I broke down the next 12 weeks, showing the system that I followed, which is the system that we have here, and just what that looked like precisely. I didn't have any insurance experience whatsoever, didn't have any knowledge of any of the products, barely understood health insurance or the fact that there was a difference between life and health, all of that. So just know that that's how I came in, just like I think everyone on here, pretty much. So let me make sure that I'm getting all this. I don't know what that means, but we're going to share it. Hopefully it lets me here. Oh, I got to do the systems. Let me do this real quick. Should have practiced this ahead of time. Okay, we're going to share sound. We're going to do that. All right, can everybody see my screen? I can't see you, so Hunter, can you see it?
Yeah, you're good.
Good, okay, sweet. All right, so we're going to talk here about, of course, my first 36 weeks, but with the context of the Great Eight, okay? What are the Great Eight? We've got massive action, constant correction. We've got association. We've got development, personal development. We have belief, right? And we've also got the 4 keys to a successful week involved in the Great Eight: resources, activity, schedule, and system. So how do we factor all of these in to each 12-week segment that we're going over here? So let's take a look at this. First 12 weeks, right? Everybody can see this. If you cannot, please say something out loud. But our first 12 weeks here. So starting up, I started in May of 2020. Average week, if you look down here, average weekly dials, 586 dials per week, contacts 56, booked 14 appointments, sat with an average of 4. I wrote an average of 1 application, and my average APV per week is 1,660. Average APV spent average money spent on leads every week is $298 per week. And this is what that yielded me for my first 12 weeks. Now, a couple things to note here. Started off pretty on the low end as far as weekly budget. This is around what's recommended for new folks, between 200, 300, in that range. But what are some things that happened here? Consistency. Spent money every single week on leads, made sure I had enough. Did I write business every single week? No, I did not. I didn't write business until my 3rd week in the field. Next week I did not. And then boom, had my first $5,000 week. Did I continue that trend? No, I didn't. I consistently wrote business after that, but it was not up to the $5,000. But it all averaged out to be 1,660 APV per week. Now, a couple things to note here. So what did we have? We had massive action, constant correction. Again, an average of 586 dials per week to make sure I showed up and booked the number of appointments that I wanted. Resources, bought leads every week. I was buying B2s, B3s, and B4s, which now are mortgage protection C, D, and E leads. So these were not top of the line, brand new leads by any means, okay? I had belief, right? These two weeks, maybe not. In fact, I remember that very vividly. Not a ton of belief, but I knew that I was going to at least break the system so that I could see whether or not it worked. This is where the belief started. I wrote 1. It finally worked. I sat with 4. I wrote on 1 of them. Belief waned a little bit here. Crap, I did not write this time. Sat with 3. Almost the same. Didn't write anything. And I had booked 15 appointments this week too. Kind of disappointing. But look where the belief started again. Booked 20 appointments. Sat with 4. Wrote on 3 out of 4. Over 5,000 APV. The next week, only booked 7. Had to take a little break, right? 20 appointments. I thought I got this. If I book 7, couples show up, I'll write on most of them. Nope, belief waned again. 1,481. The next week, back up. Booked 18. Sat with 4. Wrote on half of them. Here's the thing. I want us to look at this number right here. An average of a 35% show rate over that 12-week period. 35%. Excuse me, that's a 35% right rate. I had a 30% show rate, even lower. So I was booking the appointments that I needed for that week, had that part figured out, which means I learned the script, I memorized the script, I made sure I dialed enough, I talked to enough people to book enough appointments. That's 56 people I talked to, and only 14 of them said yes to an appointment, and then 4 of them said yes to actually showing up, and an average of 1 of them said yes to actually writing something. How many people? Let's see it in the chat. Does this kind of feel like your journey? Up and down, right? Up and down. You feel like you're just grinding. You're getting a little bit of a reward, right? Still though, look at this. If half of this issues and goes into your bank account at 80%, well, let's just say 80% contract level, we had a pretty good issue rate. That means probably around 800 bucks, right? If we're kind of going on the low end. So spending an average of 300 bucks to get 800 bucks deposited, who would make that trade? 300 for 800, right? $500 profit, and you're still learning. You're still learning in this whole thing. Wrote 19,000 total in 12 weeks. And I say this to say, these weeks are not phenomenal. These are not phenomenal starting off weeks, but these are average. These are normal. And as long as the things that are meant to be consistent are, things start to shift. But still, wrote 19,000, almost 20,000 in 12 weeks, spent almost 4,000, less than that, on leads. And this is the yield that we had. And again, this is on a weekly basis right here. So what else? We had schedule. I made sure that I was dialing an average of 586 dials every single week. Now look at this. Some weeks we had over 800, 600. Some weeks I decided to take a little break. Then we're back up again, right? Oh, shoot, that wasn't enough. I need to double down. Oh, look, I'm doing okay. I'm writing some business. I'm getting consistent. I got this thing figured out. Oh, shoot, booked 14, only sat with 1, happened to write on them. Lucky week, but that wasn't enough. Got to go back, right? This shows numerically my belief and my figuring out this system. And the more I did, the better my results were. It might not always be immediate. It might not always be immediate, but look at this. It shows up for you. It shows up for you again. As long as you either owe the numbers or the numbers owe you, and you keep that mindset, you got to keep going. Consistencies. That's what's key. Now on the schedule piece. So I made sure in the beginning that I dialed every single day. Every single day, because what hurts is what's going to make you stronger in this business. Dialing hurts most people. It's hard to get that rejection. It's hard to sit there and feel kind of dumb, dialing. All the rest of your family is outside playing in the yard. We've got family over. We've got barbecues going on. We've got kids in the background. We've got all sorts of stuff, right? Maybe not. Maybe you're just in a silent house and it feels really quiet when you're trying to dial. It hurts. But the more you do it, the better you get. The better you get. So dialed every single day. Now my schedule in the beginning, I dialed from 9 to noon, and then I dialed again from 4 to 8 p.m. And I would get my leads for the week. I spent $275 on leads. I got a bunch of B2s, B3s, B4s, as many as I could get for that lead budget. And from there, I dialed through and I made sure I got a hold of as many as I could. 80 to 90% contact rate, resolution rate. That's what we're aiming for. So you've got, out of 60 leads, you've gotten a hold of most of them, 50, 55 of them. And that's what I did every single week. Made sure I got through those. So sometimes I had a bunch of leads by the end of the week to call because I just didn't get quite the pickup rate. Sometimes I had a really good pickup rate. No week was the same for that, but I knew as long as I kept showing up, I kept doing what I needed to do, I kept following the system, I kept getting leads, I kept calling them, I kept dialing every single week. I was massively doing that, massively correcting, figuring this thing out. I knew it was going to work out. And that's the only thing I clung to. And this is where we landed. So again, had a lot of points of improvement that I could still work on here, but this is where we landed. On to the next 12 weeks. I cannot figure out this new computer. Next 12 weeks. Here we go. Again, another 12-week stretch. What changed? I spent more on leads. An average of $549 a week on leads. I bumped that up by about $300, a little less than that, every single week. But look what happened. My APV basically doubled per week. I was spending an average of 325 dials per week. I basically cut my time in half on dialing because I decided I wanted to invest a little bit more in leads. I'd learned a lot up here, right? I learned the massive action. I learned that I needed to improve my show rate because you want to aim for a minimum of 50% here. I knew I wanted to get better. Average writing 3 out of 10, that's pretty normal for new agents. So I was hitting where I needed to hit here, but there was room for improvement. The better you get at this, the more you're at 50, 60% of who you're writing on. So there is improvement here. This is what we did, right? An average of 325 dials. I talked to 51 people, booked 15 appointments, sat with 7 of them on average. So we bumped up the 30% to a 48% show rate. I got some help. I jumped on every single call that was available so I could learn and just grow from the best. I sent recordings of myself to my mentor so she could hear me and make sure that I was delivering the script correctly. I found people who were in the same place as me and did role plays with them. I listened to other people dialing. We've got a whole Miller Zoom office of people dialing all the time. I have recordings of me dialing so anyone can hear it at any time on what it sounds like. I just listened and learned and then applied what I learned, and that's what happened. Another 12 weeks. Wrote an average of 4 out of every 7 I sat with an almost 4,000 APV. Now here's what's fun right here. So another 12 weeks go by. I went from writing 20,000 APV just about to almost 48,000 in APV. Wrote 43 apps instead of 17. Sat with 84 people instead of 49. And that's the difference. 24 weeks in. That's the difference. Really, what changed? How much I was spending on leads. What was I getting? I switched to getting more B1s, which means I put in a standing lead order. Anyone can do that at any time. I recommend getting this part figured out first and then start spending more on leads. But I put in a standing lead order for 30 B1s. And then I also started getting 15 A leads. Now, back in the day, we didn't have digital leads. We didn't have all these other avenues that we could do with general life leads and Lighthouse and Razor Ridge. We didn't have that. We had bonus leads and we had mortgage protection A leads. So that's what I started doing. And that really didn't start happening until right here. Then I started spending a little bit more on most weeks on leads. So 15 A leads, 30 bonus leads. That's when I started dabbling. And this is what happened. Those results. Hunter, do you have anything to add while I'm rocking and rolling on this?
I've got a whole list of things, but
okay.
No, I just, guys, I remember, and keep in mind, I was a sideline witness during this time. So seeing this, it was an emotional roller coaster, right? There were days when I would come home and I thought Paige was going to tear every hair on her head out of frustration. You weren't there. You be quiet. There were other days when it was emotionally, very, very high and very, very exciting. And, it just, you're gonna feel that adventure. You're gonna feel the ups, you're gonna feel the downs. And that's where, this next piece that Paige is going to talk about coming in kind of in this December area, the association bit, right? And she talked about it a little bit just a few minutes ago, but reaching up, reaching out. That's where, you're able to lean on other people in this business to
help you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute back out because he's screaming, but I think Tom had something he wanted to share here.
I actually couldn't hear him. I can hear him in the other room, but I can't hear him on this. So that's a good thing. But go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just going to add to this that you found a running buddy. You found people that were doing the same thing that you were doing. We were all trying to figure this out. We were all asking questions, both up and down, of how to continue and how to keep going. And it's special when you do that. I mean, we were on the phone. We were on the phone as much as we were dialing to each other, and I think that's a huge key. It got me going, and at that same time, you were teaching, right? You were teaching, you were doing, and you were learning at the same time. And when you're learning, when you're teaching, when you're growing, you really start to expand your business. So it's just a really cool point in this.
Yeah. Hey, this is when I hired Tom Ellison right here. Right here. Now, a couple things that I did wrong and that I learned from in this time. So getting my show rate up, right? That was a huge thing. I figured I'm booking all these appointments. I might as well sit with more of them. That would help. So what did I start doing? I started booking them closer. So I booked them within 48 hours. Tried to get them even closer if possible within 24 hours. By this point, I've ran through the script. I've sat with enough people. Once you sit with about 30 people, your learning curve starts to click in. So you start to get this figured out a lot more. So I'd sat with just about 50 people. I knew how to run the script. I knew how to run an appointment. Now I just needed more of them. So book them closer in, 24 to 48 hours out. Posture changed. I stopped feeling and acting insecure. Maybe I did still feel insecure at times. This was still scary. I was still very new at this, and I by no means did not have this figured out. But I acted like I did. I channeled my I'm a doctor mentality. They requested the help. I'm here to help them. And until I get a hold of every single person that I bought that lead that week, I have not done my job. They need this. No more GoFundMe's for life insurance. That's not what that's for. So my job was to show up and make sure I delivered. Not everyone was going to be a yes. Not everyone still decided that they wanted this or it was the right timing or whatever have you. But I made sure that I did whatever I could to get a hold of everybody. That meant dialing on the weekends. That meant dialing in the evenings. That meant dialing at every different time that I could so I could get a hold of people. There's no wrong time to dial. There's no wrong time to dial. As long as you're between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., right? Don't dial at midnight. That'll be bad. But there's no wrong time to dial in that window. That's 12 hours every single day that we all have available to be able to get a hold of people. And that's what we did. We didn't have texting back then. We didn't have switchboard. We didn't have any of those things. And I say that to say that it was working then, it's going to work now. Now we have even more resources to help with your contact rate. Now we have even more tools to help give your time back. But this is still what's important. Massive action, constant correction. Belief. You start to get that when you consistently show up for yourself. You start to see these numbers unravel for yourself. First $11,000 a week right there. But guess how much I spent in leads that week? You want to know what else I did wrong here? I took I took all of October off. Hunter and I went rafting down the Grand Canyon. Never regret that ever. But what I will say is when you take a lot of big vacations or you treat yourself like you're retired when you start this business, it pays you like that. So I made no money the month of October. I only wrote on 2 out of 4 weeks in September. And then I had my standing lead order still on. Can you make sure that person's muted? I had my standing lead order still on. So when I got home, I had a lot of leads to call. I had a lot of people to get a hold of. And that's what led to this. So yeah, I had some momentum to pick back up when I got back from the Grand Canyon. But this is what happened. I sat down, I dialed all day long, made sure I got a hold of as many people as I could. I stacked myself with 17 appointments. This was in one day. I booked myself 17 appointments in one day. Guess what? I only sat with 9 of them, but I wrote on 8 of them. Hunter got home that day and I'll never forget. I said, I had an $11,000 day. Before that, 2, 3, couple 5s, 2, 1, boom. That's what happened. After that, I wrote every single week, no matter what. This is when things really changed. After this, I won a trip because of all of that. I was also recruiting, hired Tom, he was recruiting. Won a trip to Marshall Whalen's lake house. Didn't even know I was competing in this trip. So the way you constantly show up for yourself and you focus on your own goals, you focus on booking appointments, sitting with them, writing business, getting it issued, you're going to start to win things. You're going to start to stick out because the majority of people don't consistently show up for themselves. So by doing that, I ended up winning a trip to Marshall Whalen's lake house with a bunch of 130s. It was their Christmas party. Got to go to that. And that's where things really changed. That's when my lead spend increased even more. So we go on to the last 12 weeks that we're looking at here. January through March. Look at this. Lead spend jumped up another $200 every single week. $759 in lead spend. But look what happened. I was dialing even less of the time. I had more A leads, not as many people to call. So I didn't have to spend as much time doing that. I got a hold of 36 people, but ended up booking 18 appointments. So I have to talk to less people. I ended up booking 3 more appointments on average per week, sat with 11 out of 18 in a 12-week average, wrote on 5 of them. Average of 6,000 APV per week, $759 lead spend every single week. Look at this. In 12 weeks, wrote over $73,000, spent almost $10,000 in leads. A little scary when you think of just this number, $10,000 in 12 weeks on leads. But look what it yielded. Someone's salary. That's what it yielded. And it also gave me my time back. This is when I started to have more of a life. I was still recruiting. I was still producing, obviously, even better than what I was before. By this time, I thought I am never going to have time back. And I was only 325 dials a week. This felt like a breeze compared to my first 12 weeks. But I was thinking, this takes forever. This is not going to be something that I can sustain for a long period of time. But this is how this works. You get better. You spend a little bit more. You make even more. You make even more. My actual write rate. So I wrote 46% of who I sat with. It actually went down a little bit. This week, this series, I wrote on over half, not even half, but my show rate went up. That's what's important. I sat with more people. I sat with an average of 11 people per week. What do we say here? Get yourself 10 sits a week and you're never going to have to worry about money again. This is what happened. I sat with at least 10 people. I wrote on 5 out of 10, 6,000 in APV every single week. Doesn't matter what you spend on leads. If that's what you're writing, that's when it comes full circle. That's when this thing really starts to make sense. So again, what changed? My show rate increased. My APV increased. My lead spend increased, but my dial time drastically decreased from over 500, almost 600 dials a week to not even 200 dials a week. That's hours back. You should be dialing an average of 68 dials per hour. And with Switchboard, it's probably double that at this point, just about. But if you're looking at that, then that's hours back that you get on your time. I got more leads that are in the A range. I had standing lead orders to hold me accountable. So they filled every week, whether I did anything or not. They're coming in, and you can do that now. My belief drastically increased. When you're writing business every single week, no matter what, didn't always have the best weeks, but look at what my low week looked like now. 3,000 versus 0 before, or 1,000. 4,000 on the lower end, couple 4s in here. But I also had a few more 6s and a few more 5s and some 8s and a 13. That's how this works. You keep showing up for yourself. You keep doing what you can control. You can control whether you always have leads. You can control whether you're dialing them. And that's all it takes here. Showing up for yourself in those 2 areas. Now, what didn't change in any of this? Association. I still was on every single call because I knew I didn't know everything yet. There's always something I heard, whether it was maybe a low belief week, a low motivation week. Coming off of this, it's like, I don't really need to do that much this month. This is pretty good. But I know that if I take a break, if I take my feet off the gas, my momentum's going to stop. So I needed to hear that on a call that week to kick it back into gear. and book more appointments and make sure I'm sitting with people and I'm showing up again and again and again. Consistency never changed. Always got my leads, always dialed, always booked appointments because I was doing those first two things. And again, the massive action, constant correction. Emphasis on the constant correction now. I'm figuring out how to get more from my time. And you don't get here until you spend 24 weeks here and here. There. You don't get here until you do that. One fatal flaw of a lot of agents is they come in looking for this. You can't learn to hit this number until you're hitting this number and you're hitting the other number, this number first. You have to go through it. You can't go around it. But once you go through it, it doesn't take that long. And what does going through it look like? $20,000 in 12 weeks. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. How many people, this was your bi-weekly pay in your other job? Every 2 weeks, you made that. But this is every week that we're writing here. Pretty soon, doing the same thing, getting a little bit more in leads, but doing a little less time, it doubles. How many people, this was their annual, or not their annual, their monthly pay. And this is per week. Then look at this. Not many people make $6,000 a month in any other job. That's not the average in this country. This is per week that we're writing in business. And it doesn't take that long. This isn't even a full year. So you go through it in the beginning, you're going to get to this number before you realize it. And it's a gradual thing. If you feel like you're stuck, it's because you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough. All issues, all problems, all struggles here come from a lack of activity. So what should we do now? How do we get started now? We get started with getting consistent, putting in a standing lead order, making sure you have enough. And it doesn't matter what kind of leads you get. You could be getting all of the B5s or the MIEs, whatever they're called now. It's going to be hard to teach an old dog new tricks on that, but you're getting as many leads as you can, and you're hitting your weekly spend. That's what it is. Your weekly spend is what we're doing. We're getting as many leads as we can in that number every single week, whether you write business or not. Then you're sitting down and you're calling all of those people. You're triple dialing them. You're getting to where you have talked to at least 80% of them every single week. You didn't get a hold of some, they're still in your stack for the next week. You're never letting go of a lead until you get a hold of them. There are people, it took me 2 years to get a hold of, but I did. And guess what happens a lot of times when you get a hold of somebody after 2 years, you're writing business on them. They're sick of hearing from you. Something's happened. They're ready. So you're consistently showing up. You're tracking your numbers. You have to track your numbers here from start. If you haven't tracked your numbers yet, if you've got the data to go back and put it into a spreadsheet, not everyone's techie, but you can do a lot more on a spreadsheet than you can on a notebook. Track your numbers. All you have to be tracking is each week, how many dials, how many contacts, how many appointments you booked, how many people you sat with, how many applications you wrote. Take a screenshot of this if you want to. I'm not going to share it. It's on HQ under Counting What Counts, if that's still what it's called. They took my spreadsheet, made it available to everybody. Not that difficult, but this is all you're tracking here. Dials, contacts, how many appointments you booked, how many people you sat with, what did you write, how many did you write, what did you write, and how much did you spend? It helps to track what leads you got. I didn't do that well in the beginning. I started to do that later. You just can't see that for organization purposes here, but write down, what did you buy? How many of each did you buy every single week? Total, how much did you spend? Track this. Track this, track this, track this. These numbers are going to look crazy. They're going to look like this, and you're going to see exactly your mental stability throughout this. You're going to see the weeks that you did not have belief, little bit, no belief, a whole lot of belief. Oh gosh, it's waning, but now we're getting consistent. Now we're learning. And that's what we're here for. This is the number that matters the most. This row right here, the weekly average. This is going to look all sorts of crazy, but the weekly average is what we're about. So what are you doing on average? That's going to show you where we're at. And that's where we're going to know what to improve on. Can't make any changes until you get those numbers in there. You can't properly be coached by your mentor till you have the numbers in here. We can't coach emotions. We can't coach feelings. We can't coach. I feel like I got a hold of most of my leads and I feel like most of them said they already have this. That's not a fact. That's not a number. That's a feeling. And until we have the facts and the numbers, those feelings are going to dictate what you do here. Track your numbers. Numbers save lives. This is how you're going to be best mentored. So again, get consistent. Show up for yourself. What are the controllables? Controllables are you can get your leads every single week. You can control that. You can control how often you dial them. The rest of this comes into play. I didn't plan to have an $11,000 day. I didn't plan to have a $2,000 day 2 weeks later. I didn't plan for that. But this all dictated that that was going to happen for me. I didn't plan to make 47,000 in APV in that 12 weeks. I didn't plan that. But I did because I did this. Okay? I didn't plan for this, but I did because I did this and I did this. And you can too. There's no difference between you and me or anyone else here. The only thing standing in your way is time and how you're going to spend it and what you're going to do to show up for yourself. So with that, I'm going to close her on down unless Hunter, you have any last minute ads you want to throw in there?
I mean, the only thing I think to add more would be to take away, but this is such a clear-cut illustration that, Summit is great preparation. And there are a lot of resources that we can get lost in on HQ, but there's no replacement for getting out and doing it. There's no replacement for experience. There is a learning curve here that we all go through. And, you can pretty much set your clock by the fact that it'll take you 100 sits to really feel like you have mastery of this. So the only question is how fast are you going to get to 100?
And that's up to you. Happy Monday, y'all. Thanks for showing up and staying here. You did yourself a favor by learning. Hope you learned something today. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, y'all.